So on these, big thing on these is to not make them look sloppy. Lines need to be really good on this one. It's okay if you take your glasses off.
Yeah.
Scrape them. So first we're gonna do the skull. Really the skull, it's called the skull, but it really is looking more at the cranium part on this. So if you do cut a little bit of the bottom part off, that's okay. It's called the skull, but it's really more looking at the cranium. So lateral skull, it says 10 by 12 crosswise. Crosswise. In the Bucky, so it says position, patient either standing, seated, upright, or semi-prone with the side of interest closest to the IR. I really always do everything standing up if I can. So on this, I think it's just easier standing up, just get them in the position you want. Adjust the mid-sagittal plane parallel to the image receptor, center the EAM to the midline of the table. Adjust the flexion of the patient's neck so that the OML is parallel. IPL is perpendicular. So main things on laterals. A lateral is a lateral is a lateral. So on all the laterals, I want mid-sagittal. So if here's the board, I want mid-sagittal plane to be parallel to the board. I want IPL to be perpendicular to the board, and IOML to be parallel to the board. That IOML, basically, if you just kind of turn your head up just a little bit, that'll get that parallel too. Main thing I talk about on laterals is that when I turn him, his body's going to be like this. He's going to be like that in a lateral to get his face close, because this will not be good. His face will be really far away. To me, a good lateral is if I come up here and stand at him, if we can have a conversation, it's a good lateral. If he's looking like this and I have to stand over here to have a conversation, not a good lateral. If I have to tilt my head to be on point with him, not a good lateral. So that's kind of my thing. If it looks like we can have a conversation, it's good. Central right, 2 inches above the EAM. So I'll go ahead and just do the left. So go ahead and put your chest up against the board. Go ahead and stand up straight.
I'm like, okay.
Chest all the way up against, yeah. Up. So I'm gonna go about 2 inches above the EAM. Let's do forward for me. A little bit more. So EAM right there, 2 inches above the EAM. Turn your head just a little bit that way. Good. So now we're having a conversation. The sagittal plane is parallel to the image receptor. IPL is perpendicular to. IOML is parallel to the image receptor. Turn that one just a hair. Yeah, good. Raise this up. And I keep all these open on the skull. So 2 inches above the EAM. Got his whole skull. You see it does clip off a little bit of mandible, but cranium's main part. So all these are just hold your breath, expose. Hold on, that should be done. You can relax if you need to. Main thing is your lines. That's not very hard, but your lines. So 3 lines on lateral, mid-sagittal plane parallel, IPL perpendicular, IOML parallel. Main lines on that. PA skull, so it's going to be PA axial. It's a Caldwell method. So 10 by 12 lengthwise, prone or facing the erect unit, mid-sagittal plane perpendicular. So it's adjust the cranium to place the OML perpendicular to the IR. A good thing, I always want the OML perpendicular. A good way to kind of go about it is to put the patient's forehead and nose on the image receptor. That should get the OML pretty perpendicular too. I might still have to do some adjusting, but that's kind of a good starting point. Angle 15 degrees caudal to the OML, 10 by 12 lengthwise, and I exit the nasion. So this one's going to be 15 degrees caudal. Face the board for me. So, OML, if y'all can kind of see that. So, OML, perpendicular to the board. Tilt your chin down just a hair more.
For this one?
Down just a hair.
Down this way?
Yeah. Good. So OML perpendicular to that image receptor. 15-degree caudal angle, and I want to exit through his nasion. Another thing kind of to do on this, if you kind of stand behind them, I'll scoot you over just a little bit, you can kind of make sure their head is nice and straight. So that line's going boom right through the middle. OML perpendicular, exiting the nasion. Hold your breath, expose.
Is that usually going to be on the top of the ear? The light right there?
I really don't
Just
know.
depends.
I'm just looking at it going through the nasion
Okay.
on that. That's my main. So having that line, follow it through, boom, right through the nasion. It'll probably be close, but. So I've got the whole cranium. This one I'm probably going to get all of the whole skull markers. Make sure, red marker. And relax. Is there any questions on that one? So the next one is apiaxial, the Town method. When I go over these, I think I'm gonna go over them tomorrow. Basically, I use a very dramatic angle on this one, and basically, I always kind of say it, aliens coming to town, because when you do it, it's very thrown, looks very elongated, it almost looks like an alien head. So an alien is coming to town on this one. So on this one, it says position the patient supine or AP erect, place mid-sagittal plane perpendicular to the IR, OML perpendicular by flexing the neck. It says use 30-degree caudal tube angle. Central ray should enter the level of the hairline 2.5 inches above the glabella. Pass through the EAM and exit the foramen magnum. If the IOML is perpendicular because of patient condition, increase the tube angle to the 37 degrees. So apiaxial towns, you can do two things. Main thing you're supposed to do, patient permits, you put your OML perpendicular. Always kind of say on this one, it's very awkward. You got to double chin it because you really need to put your chin down very far to get that OML perpendicular too. If they cannot get their OML perpendicular, I can use an IOML and make that 37 degrees. So I really don't care which one you do as long as it's equal. If you do 30, do the OML. If you do 37, do the IOML. Do know that OML is supposed to be the go-to for this one. So on this one, it's going to be a 30-degree angle. No matter who you are, it's going to be pretty high. So you're going to have to sit down for this one. I don't have enough room to do 30 and get where I need to go. Let me make sure this.
So you'll take it down to 60. Is that the degree? And then it'd be what, 52.5 the other way, if you had to do the 37. Oh, it is 37, not 37.5.
Yeah.
But yeah, 53. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know where I got.
I gotcha. Yeah, you're good. So on this one, I'm gonna do. Lower this down just a little bit more. Yeah, let's kind of scoot that. So on this one, tilt your head down as far, maybe just a hair more. You're pretty good right there. His OML looks pretty good right there. It's pretty uncomfortable. So his OML looks pretty good right there. Good. So basically his hairline. So basically kind of the top of the forehead right there. Just scoot you over just a little bit that way. Yeah.
Would you need to bring this in?
No,
Just-
because it would be out of D10.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Just check.
So on this one, I'm angled 30. His OML is perpendicular too. I'm 2.5 inches above the glabella, usually going right there at the hairline, bringing it down. If you look at it, it's going right through the foramen magnum. It's getting all the forehead or all the skull. Right marker. Hold your breath. Relax.
Does he need to be centered or not really?
Oh, sorry, I kind of thought he was. My bad. Let's scoot over. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I was taking a picture too.
Such an awkward position.
It is an awkward
You're like,
position.
you
Yeah,
didn't
it's
have your
awkward.
mask on. It's,
Yeah, yeah. And the last one's the one that's super uncomfortable. So you thought that one was bad. So this one's gonna be the SUV on this one. Close your eyes real quick. Okay, so on this one, it says, too much well lengthwise, it says position the patient supporting the shoulders or erect, extend the patient's head back to rest on the vertex, adjust the mid-sagittal plane perpendicular, so your head's gonna be back like this.
Yeah.
So that mid-sagittal plane is gonna be perpendicular, his head should be far enough back that the IOML is parallel, so that's very different. It says, direct the central ray perpendicular to the IOML, entering between the angles of the mandible and passing through the sella turcica. So all that to say, 3/4 an inch anterior to the EAM. Will exit at the vertex. Too much of lengthwise. Good to go. So on this one, scoot your chair forward just a hair. I'm gonna lower this down just a little bit. And then if I'm doing this, patient kind of adjust their head. Go ahead and lean back for me. Back of the head, right there. Scoot you over just a hair. This one's gonna be 3/4 an inch anterior to the EAM. So there's EAM, 3/4 an inch anterior. I'm gonna raise this up just a little bit. So do y'all see how its IOML is parallel? Y'all see that? So, nice and straight, back, marker, hold your breath, expose.
it's not gonna.
It's not comfortable, so that one needs to be quick. So, yeah. Did you need to take a picture of it?
I almost freaked out.
You did?
Yeah.
It's,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry, and it's like you can't swallow in this position, and yeah, you can relax if you need to.
Okay.
Did y'all see how his IOML was parallel too? You tilt your head back like that, that IOML is parallel, mid-sagittal plane perpendicular. I just scooted him over, that's the mid-sagittal plane, and then I centered 3/4 an inch above his EA. Right marker, too much lengthwise. Questions on any of those?
On the lateral, can it be left or right? Does it?
Yeah, just a side of interest. So facial bones, sinuses. So sinuses, this is if possible, patient saw be seated or stand in position to demonstrate air fluid levels. So I always want to do these upright. So I don't want to distort air fluid levels on this one. So I would never do these laying down on the table. I would always do them either if he can't stand like he is, sitting down and doing it in the chair. So on this one, all these laterals are gonna be the exact same with the same lines. The centering's just gonna be a little bit different to be closer to the sinuses. That was 2 inches above the EAM, more on the cranium. This one's gonna be more over the sinuses. So, on this one, 10x12 crosswise on this one. Use horizontal central ray to see air fluid levels, head and true lateral position, mid-sagittal plane parallel, IPL perpendicular, IOML parallel. So center point 1/2 inch to 1 inch posterior to the outer canthus, and then really collimate to the sinuses. We really haven't gotten to this, we've mentioned like 3 pairs of sinuses so far, but you have the frontal sinuses, ethmoid, sphenoid, and then the maxillary. So basically on this one, if I collimate to like right behind the ear and then my lips, that's going to be a good collimation for the sinuses. Go ahead and put your chest up. Go ahead and stand up. Nice and straight. Tilt back that way just a little bit.
You said in front of the lips?
Yeah. Or at the lips. Just scoot you back just a little bit. So half an inch past the outer canthus right there. I'm gonna collimate a little bit. Behind the ear. Just a little bit. Raise this up just a little. Good. So we're having a conversation now. It's Sag, IPL, IOML, half an inch posterior, collimated down some. So this one, hold your breath. So still that lateral. Last one was 2 inches above the EAM. This one half an inch posterior, half an inch posterior to the EAM. So I'm centered like right there. So for the Caldwell, so on this one, you can relax, you need to. On this one, you always want to do it upright for the sinuses, and you don't want to use an angle for the sinuses because it's going to distort air fluid levels. So on the Caldwell, it says, position the patient erect PA with the mid-sagittal plane perpendicular to the midline with a perpendicular central ray. Tilt the top of the head back so that the OML forms a 15-degree angle to the central ray. So when I did that Caldwell the last time, I did a 15-degree angle, so I don't want to angle the tube on this one because I don't want to store air fluid levels, so I'm going to angle him 15 degrees. Still center to the nasion. We don't have a head unit. I'll talk about that more in class. So go ahead and tilt down just a little bit. So there's OML perpendicular 2. So there's OML perpendicular 2. I just want to tilt him up just a little bit. So now OML is 15 degrees. Very tiny. So there's OML will be perpendicular. There's 15 degrees. Using that straight on beam.
So is that what is it meaning in the, is that what it was meaning in the book when it had the 7 and 8 degrees in between those two things? No?
It's like a
Romeo and Iowa.
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah.
difference
So
in
The
the
difference between that and that,
Mhm.
yeah, 7 or 8 degrees, yeah, yeah. But this is just needing the OML to be 15 degrees.
Say that again?
The OML is 15 degrees, so if the OML was straight, that would be right there. That OML is like right there. So it's 15 degrees. There's 0, there's 15. Does that make sense?
Mhm. And where did you begin? Just,
I center to the nasion. What do you mean?
I don't know what I meant.
Caldwell, I put his head up so that OML was perpendicular to, and then I raised him up just a little, so now that's 15. So on this one,
from like here to
just here.
here.
So I'm gonna just calm me down just a little bit, just kind of to the top of his head. I don't want to cut off maxillary, so I'll just do a little bit of collimation. Hold your breath exposed. So, OML, 15, exiting the nasion, middle, nice and centered, right marker. So this one, this one is the waters. So kind of how I mentioned on the Caldwell, it was like, how I mentioned on the towns was like an alien coming to town. A waters is like this, so it's like you're coming up out of water. So we'll kind of look at these when we look at the images. So this one, PA, using a horizontal central ray, mid-sagittal plane perpendicular, hyperextend the neck so the OML forms 37 degrees to the grid. So every time I do waters, for some reason I always kind of do this. So basically, when I'm going like this, I'm making your OML 37 and your MML perpendicular. So this is my OML and MML, so I'll kind of go like that. This is my waters I do. MML should be straight, OML should be 37. I'm not gonna bust out a protractor and be like, are you 37? But your OML should look like a solid 45, 37, 45, pretty similar. So if your OML looks like a 45, it should be good. So on this one, it's pretty, go ahead and face the board for me. On this one, really what you do, go ahead and tilt your chin up, put your chin on the board. Good. That's what I do for my waters. So it's not, his head is not hyperextended, it's almost just like I look forward. So his NML is perpendicular, and if you look at his OML, that looks like a pretty 45-ish. So good to go on that. On this one, it's gonna exit the acanthion. So a little hard to see, but I know his nose is there, his acanthion is about right there. So waters, really, how much just look up, MML straight, OML, 37. You see the other one was 15, it wasn't as steep. This one, 37. So if it looks pretty much like a 45, it should be good. You can relax. I'm not gonna do the SMB on you again, I'm not making you stuff to do that, but that's also on the sinuses as well. It's the exact same thing, the exact same centering, same thing. So they do get repetitive again, and I'm probably not gonna go, I'm gonna go let y'all do it. But on the facial bones, you have a lateral, and the lateral, the centering, all what I do position-wise is the same. So I'm not gonna go over these, but I'll let y'all practice, and they're pretty repetitive. But the centering is gonna be on the zygoma. So what you do on on the skull, you have 2 inches above the EAM. On the sinuses, you have half an inch to an inch posterior to the outer canthus. On the facial bones, I'm trying to get more on the facial bones. So I go from the outer canthus to EAM, right there in between. Boom, I should be right on my cheekbone, right there. So y'all see the centering is there. I mean, it was centered like right there. Now it's right there for the facial bones. Same centering, collimate down to the facial bones. On this one, I can kind of cut the cranium out, and then I just need to make sure I see all the facial bones. So facial bones, the lateral is actually going to be lengthwise for facial bones. So everything we've done so far, skull, cranium, lengthwise, facial bones from the side is very long. So that's going to be lengthwise. The water's the exact same that I just did. Centering, everything's the same. The Caldwell is the same that I just did. The first one that I did, the 15 degrees caudal and eggs in the nasion, it's exactly the same. So I'll let y'all practice and not go over it again, but it gets very repetitive.
On the facial bone, on like the lateral, where are you cutting off at? Like right?
I would do it
about
behind the ear.
Behind the ear. Okay.
Yeah, because
Gotcha.
you have kind of your TMJ right there, so that's a little close. I do it behind the ear.
Okay.
So I can help y'all with collimation when y'all get to facial bones, but the positioning itself is exactly the same. So these do get pretty repetitive. So the main thing on these that I'm going to be real picky about is your lines. Just make sure lines are good. That's the biggest thing on these, just not to make them sloppy. Is there any questions on those at all?
Can you repeat what you said? I know it's in the paper, but the skull, you said it was 2 inches.
Above the
above
EAM?
the EAM. The sinuses is a half inch posterior, the outer canthus.
Mm-hmm.
And then the facial bones.
Is on the zygoma, so you go between the outer canthus, EAM, right there in between, and you should land boom right on your cheekbone.